Empathy is one of our most important skills to develop if we want to parent peacefully and effectively, if we want to be gentle parents who are also able to teach our children how to operate in this very complicated world that we live in. But in this episode, we're going to explore whether or not we can take empathy too far. So many parents who are committed to parenting differently than the way that they were parented can become overly fixated on their family's emotional state and overcorrect from the experience that they're trying to mitigate from their own child. It's totally natural. I used to be there too. The challenge with this, of course, is that we become responsible for everyone else's feelings and bend over backwards in order to keep everybody happy and smiling. We can start to have leaky boundaries. And as you're going to hear Ariela share in today's coaching session with Sarah, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Our role as parents is to support our children to be with their emotions, to create an experience for them where they learn that emotions are safe and welcome. To develop emotional intelligence in our kids, we don't want them to not feel what they're feeling. And to develop emotional intelligence within ourselves, we get to develop the capacity to be with others while they're having feelings that may be uncomfortable for us. It can be hard to learn to separate our emotional experience from the emotional experience of the people that we care about and love. But it can be done. It's a learnable skill. It's something that we work with our coaches on developing a capacity for, because in the relating that they're going to be doing with their future clients, big stuff is going to come up. But when we meet the people that we are charged with leading in that reactive space, we can't provide the guidance and support that will help move them through their emotion versus being reactive to it. You're going to just love this parent coaching session. Ariela is such a light and an amazing mom. And as always, our master trainer, Sarah Moore, just provides a beautiful example of what parent coaching looks like in real life. Enjoy.
When I was driving yesterday to school to pick up my kids, I was hearing the book again, the nonviolent communication. And then suddenly something made like a huge like click in my, it wasn't in my mind. It was like inside that I get to notice like I am so attached to my family, to my parents, my brothers, but also to my husband and my kids. So like the attachment, I think it's like a little extra that it's supposed to be. And for example, like every time it's their birthdays, I get like it's a lot for me. Like I suffer a little bit because and I didn't know what was going on. Like I plan and I decorate the house for the kids to make it like extra special every year. Not with gifts, but with love, like details. I don't know. Like I want to warm them, to hold them, to make them feel like happy and loved and like that, like my movements.
Yes.
But every birthday, for example, for me it's heavy. I don't like it. I get very sensitive, like I cry, and I want to be the best day ever for each one of them, but for me isn't. So I was like, something it's not good. I need to understand it. And then yesterday it was like perfect how um the writer said like you can make the others' feelings your responsibility. So I'm totally on that like phrase. I'm living my life with a lot of things of my own, and at the same time, I don't know how to say in English, adjusting to me, giving to me
Yes. Yeah.
what my mom feels every day, my husband, my three kids, my brothers. I can't I can't see them in pain or suffering or sad. I I am a very positive person. I always want to see them happy, but this is not natural.
Yes. Oh, I love that you are bringing this question to our discussion. And I'm noticing a number of really important things to highlight. Number one, I love that you described the click that you experienced as not just an intellectual awakening or awareness, but rather an emotional
Right.
awakening. That's huge. And that's something that I want every parent, including you, to be able to tap into. Because when you feel that, it means you're really on to something important. There is something here that is going to help be a driving force toward a healthier relationship with yourself and with your children. I also hear you saying that there are some beautiful things about being so close with your extended family, with your husband, with your children. And there are some other parts that you are very keenly aware are perhaps beyond where they should be. And both are true. It's not,
Yeah.
you shouldn't feel the high highs, but the low lows can feel like too much for you. And it sounds a little bit to me, and obviously we only just started unpacking this, but it sounds a little bit to me like there may be some components of what we call enmeshment, where we have a hard time separating our experience from the experiences of those people around us. So
Yeah.
one of the healthiest things we can do is absolutely welcome and embrace and celebrate the fact that our brains are working correctly. We have something called mirror neurons where we are actually supposed to pick up each other's emotions. So in that way, the brain is doing beautiful things. And I hear so much love coming from you and that you want your family to be happy and joy filled and have this wonderful life where you can celebrate every day together. And I also hear that it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And something you said made me also think how you said, like, your extended family. That's my parents and my brothers.
Yeah.
So for me, that sounded like, no, how can you say that? They are not extended, they are part.
Yes. Yes. That's a paradigm shift because you're right. Of course, they are a part of you and they're also outside you, which
Yeah.
can feel like a huge shift, especially since at one point you were the child. You
Yeah.
are your parents' daughter. You are your parents' child. You will always have your inner child's relationship of, I want to create happiness outside of me. And I'm going to ask you a very pointed question. And there's going to be no way we can unpack all of this in a short period of time. But at the same time, I'm wondering if we can ask little you if there were ever times positively or negatively. I'm not going to judge that. But were there ever times where perhaps you felt responsible for being a peacemaker? You felt responsible for creating or strengthening the happiness in your life when you were little. Was that ever your experience?
I always was that piece, but also, like, I'm thinking, like, in school, if somebody got bullied, I was the one that took like this and this, like, don't do that, to like defender, like always defending my people. And something from my family, my extended family, like my mom and my grandma, they fight a lot. They are so different, and I'm always in the middle. That's one example. But like for with my parents and my brothers, it actually they always were like this. I was like, Mom, please this, or Dad, please, Mom, this, and they are always like, we're together. We'll figure it out this with you. Like I wasn't, but I don't know. But there's something on that for sure.
I hear that. Even the extent to which I heard you say your mother and your grandmother had a lot of conflict. And I'll
Yeah.
reflect back something you said there. I always felt like I was in the middle. So there
Yeah.
is something that you picked up where you learned to feel responsible for fixing other people's stuff. And that was never fair to you. You were a kid. It wasn't your job to do that. It was their job to do that. And in no way am I trying to be hard on them, because I know for a fact they did the best they could, but somehow they communicated to little you that, whether they intended to or not, and my guess is that they did not intend to do this, but you perceived that it was your job to help keep everybody happy. You had an intense desire to maximize peace and minimize conflict. And this actually can turn into a beautiful thing. The world needs peacemakers. Blessed are peacemakers, right? We have heard this expression. You know that you have an important role to help create peace in the world. And it's part of the reason you're going through this program right now. And
Yeah.
at the same time, perhaps the most profound peace that I'm hearing you have a legitimate need to create is the peace within yourself, which you're starting to acknowledge and realize that your experience actually is separate from other people's. And yes, you can be supportive. Yes, you can validate feelings. Yes, you can have huge empathy for people.
But not going extra,
Yeah,
because I'm exhausted. As you said, I'm exhausted. Like I'm dealing with myself. I'm grieving my dad died 4 months ago. And also I'm dealing with everybody's feelings on me.
exactly. Yeah.
Oof.
You are a beautifully sensitive, peacemaking soul. And sensitive is one of the highest compliments I can give to anybody in the world, because the world needs sensitive peacemakers. And the peace that you have within you, where you know you don't have to fix other people's stuff, you don't have to own it, you can show up. You can provide the 4 S's of secure attachment. You can help your children and others in your family feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure without it having to come out of your personal emotional wellness bucket. So, a concept to dive into in the most compassionate way is going to be that emotional enmeshment concept of how do I get to feel my feelings without taking them on from other people, and simply become a noticer. And as we wrap up today, my invitation to you is, for the rest of today, for the rest of the week, whenever it feels emotionally accessible to you, when you notice somebody struggling with anything, rather than feeling yourself dive into sharing the experience, notice the experience. It doesn't mean you shut off. It means you intellectualize. I am noticing, you might even say exactly this, I am noticing that this person is feeling something that feels tough for them right now.
Mhm.
I can show up for them, but it's not my job to fix it. When I say that, how does that land in your body as we wrap up today?
Good. And I also get like, I live for empathy. It's like my but I go too far. So
Share some of that empathy with yourself, my friend, because you deserve that loving, tender, peacemaking, beautiful sensitivity within your own body first. where you get to acknowledge, as you have today, by the way, you're doing incredibly brave and important work. This is hard. This is exhausting. And I deserve the empathy and compassion that I have been pouring out on others just as much as they do. But I can't be all things to all people. And the more I fill my own bucket, the more I start to take care of myself in this way, the more we can untangle and the more we can simply support each other with the love and compassion that everybody truly does deserve. And they most certainly do receive from you.
Wow. I love it. Thank you. I
Yeah.
have to work a lot, and this is a very good beginning.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this question, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
I can only imagine how many parents, especially parents who are attracted to joy and peaceful parenting and gentle parenting, can relate to what Ariela so vulnerably shared with you in this coaching session, because so many of us are inspired to be the parents that we are because of the roles that we had to play when we were kids. And so we bend over backwards to do everything for everybody else, which, as Ariel said, is exhausting. But it's also, from my perspective, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say, Sarah, a way that we get in the way of peaceful parenting being as effective as it could be. And you brought up this concept of enmeshment. So I'd love to just start there. Can you explain what enmeshment is and kind of how it develops?
Yeah. So I love that we're starting the discussion like this because it is the reality for many of us who care deeply for our children. It is a very steep hill where it's very easy to slide into enmeshment when we care deeply. So I want to normalize that it's really common. Now, backing this truck up for a second, I'm going to talk about how our brains work. And our brains have this beautiful thing called mirror neurons. And what mirror neurons do is effectively they make emotions contagious. So if I come into this call with you, Kiba, and I am exhibiting my inner cheerleader, who, by the way, I have never been and never will be, but if
I'll be here for you. Don't you worry.
fantastic. You bring the pom-poms, I will bring the hot chocolate. All good. So if I brought that to you, you would naturally feel more excited during our conversation because that's contagious. Likewise, if I came in bawling my eyes out, you might start to tear up too before you even knew what was going on. This is just the beautiful part of having a shared human experience. Now, that's normal. That's what the brain is supposed to do. The enmeshment part happens when we take it too far. And what I mean by that is it's perfectly okay and normal and healthy to share each other's emotional state. But to take on the emotional state of somebody else as if it's our own, along with the perceived belief that we need to fix it, we need to solve it, we need to go through it as if it were our direct experience, that's where enmeshment happens. And that is the absolute foundation from which the exhaustion can grow. Because guess what? I, as a human being, have enough feelings of my own on any given day. But to take on others' emotional experiences as well as my own is more capacity than I could ever reasonably expect to have. So for us as parent coaches, part of our mission is to help people develop a healthier relationship of allowing them to still care deeply, to still show up compassionately, to still be with our children without putting our own emotional well-being in jeopardy.
Mm. There's another side to this coin that I see playing out, which is that if we're basing our own worth as a parent or effectiveness of a parent on the emotional experience of a child, and we say no, and they get angry, or we don't. I just saw a tweet on Twitter about, mom who was being beaten up relentlessly by her 15-year-old daughter because she wouldn't let her daughter go to Coachella for 3 days camping. It's like, yes, we get to have boundaries as peaceful parents, and our children are going to be angry about it. That's okay. And so if there's an enmeshment, that's where boundaries get leaky. That's where edges get pushed. That's where some entitlement can start to creep in, or kids that haven't ever had the opportunity to, live the consequences of their choices. And so it's like the both, like, A, it's exhausting, and B, the most powerful teaching tool that we have as parents who are not going to punish, are not going to use timeouts, are certainly not going to physically or emotionally harm our children, is that authentic emotional response to our guidance and our boundaries and our limits. Anyway, soapbox.
Yeah, for sure. And this is really hard, especially for those of us who may have experienced when we were children somebody not showing up for us, somebody not validating our feelings, somebody making us feel wrong for having the feelings that we had. We might be very personally motivated to make our child's experience with us as a parent better than the experience we receive from the people who took care of us when we were growing up. That is an absolutely worthy goal. So I want to celebrate the cycle breakers. I want to celebrate people who say, I want better for my children than what I received. But at the same time, we don't want to flip from what we at Jive call power over to power under, and instead just say, my goal in life is to make my child's life as easy and painless as possible. Instead, by the way, that can be linked to all sorts of things, not the least of which is failure to thrive, failure to launch into adulthood later on. But what I'm talking about is let's create that power with dynamic where you get to feel your stuff, I get to feel my stuff, and together as a team, we'll work it out. But I'm not responsible for fixing you or sheltering you. My job is to help support you with compassion so that you believe in yourself and you have some legitimate life skills that you can use going forward.
Yeah. You talked in this session about the 4 S's: safe, soothed, seen, and supported.
Here, yeah.
And I love this concept of actually like turning that support system, like giving ourselves the 4 S's, right? So when my child is angry or when my child is sad, how do I bring the 4 S's to myself first so that I'm not unconsciously reacting to my own triggers around those feelings, experiences, and emotions?
One of the most tangible and helpful tools that I use personally in my own parenting journey that I coach people to when I coach parents is this simple phrase. All it is all of your feelings are safe here. When I say that out loud, a couple of things happen. Number one, I remind myself to make it so. I need to create an environment where my child feels free to express themselves authentically. Number two, the child hears the message. I get to feel whatever it is I'm feeling without being made to feel wrong for feeling whatever it is. And then coming back to the core of your question, Kiva, my inner child is also paying attention. If I tell myself all of your feelings are safe here, that includes mine too. That might mean that in the moment I acknowledge while I am simultaneously supporting my child, this is really hard. I don't feel like I can do this. I feel ill-equipped. I'm going into fight or flight. And along with any narrative that I might have, I am also reassuring myself, this is safe. I got this. And in tandem with that, I can check in with my body to say, what is my body needing right now? Am I breathing? Or am I holding my breath? Am I wiggling my toes to remind myself that I have a whole body here? Am I doing whatever my coping strategy is so that I can create the level of safety in my body to be able to provide any safety to my child? That's when I really start to show up for myself and reinforce the message that I am now the adult. There's no other adult here who's going to be scary or dismissive and make me feel less than in any way. I can care about myself and love myself through this so that I can support my child.
I love that. There was this gorgeous moment in the session where you could see that Ariela felt seen by you. And as parent coaches, I think this is one of the most incredible roles that we get to play, because the truth of the matter is most of us don't have people in our lives that we can say, this is hard or this is exhausting, who either, we're scared they're going to feel responsible or guilty or ashamed, or people who are going to try and fix it for us. And that release that she had after you said, and that sounds exhausting, was so beautiful, Sarah. As a coach, how do you navigate knowing when it's time to mirror versus when it's time to give suggestions or give advice?
Really a question. Some of it, honestly, is just practice. I've been doing this for enough years now that I sort of intuitively know when it's time to say something. I have learned to get really comfortable with awkward pauses. And oftentimes, when I give the person I'm coaching the space to finish saying what they need to say, which is often the logistical stuff, it's the problem at hand, it's the very cognitive processing part of whatever they're dealing with. If I create a space for that awkward pause at the end where I don't feel the need to jump in and offer advice or offer solutions or anything else I might be tempted to offer, and simply allow that space, that is a beautiful space where oftentimes the person I'm coaching will fill that space in themselves with what they're actually feeling and might do it verbally. She might have said to me, I am exhausted. But if she didn't, I might simply pick it up by her body language. It's those slumped shoulders. It's the look on the face. It's the tears that might be coming up. I'm going to key off of something either that I hear or that I notice in body language, where I get to get curious as a parent coach and say, I wonder if it's like this for you. When people have that space, that quiet where they can hear themselves instead of hearing me just interjecting with my next great idea, that is often some of the most beautiful space in parent coaching, because people learn it's not scary to feel this way. I am held in this space. And that's exactly the kind of safety that I want to create for people.
It occurs to me as you're saying that that's actually a beautiful practice to demesh ourselves from our children, to develop that capacity to let there be silence, to allow them to process, to allow them to get to a place where they feel like they have fully expressed whatever it is. Always blows my mind. I've been doing this for 15 years, how many connections there are between how we train parent coaches and how we show up as parents.
Absolutely.
Wild.
Sure. And for what it's worth, Kiba, I saw this play out the other night with my very own child. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but honestly, part of the reason I didn't jump in and say something is I wasn't sure what to say. But all of a sudden, in that moment, in that pause, my child, who, by the way, sees me do this or hears me talk about it all the time, not that she's in the sessions, I want to be clear, she is not, but I certainly talk about emotional intelligence and model all this in my interactions with her. But when she had that space with whatever it was the other day, she just looked at me and she said, Mama, I feel so frustrated. I was like, oh, an emotion word. You are acknowledging this for yourself. I can work with this, but we know from the science, the whole name it to frame it concept, just allowing people to acknowledge what's actually going on in their internal world is profoundly healing. And it doesn't matter if we're talking to a 10-year-old or a 55-year-old or anywhere in between. Everybody has the capacity when we create that safety.
Yeah. I like to think of myself, I've shared this analogy before, maybe it's like a visualization, but when other people in my life are having big emotions or big feelings, I think of it like a storm. And I think of myself as a 100-year oak tree with roots that reach deep, deep, deep into the soil and a big, firm trunk. But I also have boughs and limbs and leaves, and they can move, right? Like they can be blown about. And sometimes I'm just imagining that movement, but often I will sway and I will move. And it just allows me to sit in that storm without meeting another person in it, whether it's my child or a client or my partner. Um, it's a really good one. You guys should try it on, see if that helps. Do you have any favorite grounding tools like that, Sarah?
Yeah, I also have a storm analogy, and I love, by the way, that your tree sways, because I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when they use the be the calm in your child's storm
The grace.
is they firm up, they tense up, they become rigid. Plus, it's 100%, I'm going to name it, unrealistic. Guess what? If there's a huge storm, and if I'm an oak tree, it's not like I'm not getting wet. I'm still getting, I am still affected by whatever my child is bringing to me. So my job is to be able to say, to key off your analogy, how deep are my roots? I'm It's going to ground me in this moment, even though it feels messy and wobbly and windy outside. But I know because I've been here for 100 years, and this storm, it's not the be all end all. I still got these roots. I might lose a branch. Whoops. Okay, that was me in a moment when I didn't handle that perfectly. Let's give ourselves grace for the branches that we lose in these storms. But reality is that as long as we know where our roots are, we can handle it.
So good. Sarah, you're awesome.
Thank you. So are you. We work well together.